All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us and welcome to Humane Education, How Everyone Can Get Involved, presented by HEART. This is the 7th edition in our webinar series, so if you're just tuning in, please do check out our previous webinars at teachhumane.org.
Hi, so my name is Mickey Kudia. I'm the Chicago Program Manager. I teach lessons at our schools across Chicago, and I also develop resources and professional development for educators.
And my name is Claire Howe. I'm the Portland Program Manager and a Humane Educator at HEART. And my sidekick here, Vivian Lydia, is joining us again this afternoon. And as with any of our webinars, I'm really excited to talk about today's topic because, as we'll discuss a bit more in a moment, I truly believe that humane education is a movement, and as such, anyone and everyone can get involved if they care about making the world a better place, not just for those of us who are here now, but for those to come as well. And if you're new to HEART, we're a national nonprofit with offices in New York, Chicago, Indianapolis, and Portland, Oregon. And we're devoted to direct service and advocacy for comprehensive humane education. And just quickly, for anyone who is new to our webinars or the idea of humane education, humane ed is really all about learning to be kind to everyone who shares this planet with us, as well as the environment, and to then take action to make the world a better place. So in a humane education lesson or program, students learn about environmental ethics, animal protection, and human rights issues, and they're then invited to think critically about how what might seem like isolated issues, pet homelessness or plastic pollution, just as examples, actually impact people, animals, and the environment. After students have learned about a humane education topic, they're given a safe space to think critically, free of judgment, about their own most compassionate, sustainable solutions, which is, of course, a really empowering experience for the students, but it's also a crucial first step towards creating a kinder world for everyone. So what are we going to cover today? Well, to start, we just like to talk a little bit about why this is even important, why it's important for people to get involved with humane education, and how we can effectively advocate for humane ed as a social movement. And after we've done that, we're going to discuss how different communities of people can get active for humane ed. So we've chosen 6 different populations, although there are certainly many, many more, because everyone with us today will surely fit into at least one, if not several, of these categories. But you might notice one important community is missing. It's teachers. Since teachers are, of course, a huge part of propelling humane education forward, we're actually going to devote future webinars in their entirety to focusing on how educators who teach specific subjects can infuse humane education into their classrooms and generally get more involved. Now, before we get started today, we wanted to conduct just a few quick polls to get to know who's with us today. This first poll, we're just asking, what is your title? Which of these communities do you identify with? And please feel free to choose more than one. Okay, interesting. So it looks like we have a lot of both teachers and administrators and parents with us. And you know, I always wonder, because so many of us are teachers, but also a lot of us are just concerned citizens, right? People who really care about this. Okay, this is really interesting. Thank you so much. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. We'd like to know what types of resources you feel you need to get more involved. So again, please feel free to choose all that apply. Okay, fantastic. Right. Also really helpful. It looks like the majority of you are really saying lesson plans and also data on humane education's positive effects. That's so interesting. Okay. Well, thank you all so much for participating in the polls. I did also want to mention before we really get going here that we have a handout available for download on the right-hand side of your screen in that control bar. You'll see handout 1. If you go ahead and click on it, you can download an informational sheet about humane education laws in the United States. So please just feel free to download that at your convenience, and I'll talk a little bit more about it when we discuss lobbying. So as professional humane educators and advocates, we often hear from people who would like to become more involved with humane education, but they're fearful they can't contribute because they aren't teachers or don't necessarily work in education. And as we've mentioned previously, teachers play a huge and vitally important role in advocating for and certainly implementing humane education. But teachers also really need our help in creating a societal atmosphere where humane education is viewed as being more of a social justice movement or a cause that everyone can get involved in. We really want to create an ecosystem that supports humane education, and that means that we need to organize and mobilize all sorts of different types of people and communities. Now, one of the most beautiful things about humane education is that it can be this incredibly unifying movement, right? We as a society really value and respect education, and if you ask someone, hey, what's a contemporary issue impacting people, animals, or the planet that you really care about, that you're passionate about? Most people, if not anyone you ask, would likely have at least one contemporary issue, if not several, that are important to them. And because humane education really focuses on the interconnectedness of humans, animals, and our natural world, if someone cares about a specific and maybe seemingly isolated issue, let's just say pollution, for example, then they do in fact already care about our planet and everyone who lives here because that issue impacts us all. So while different people may have varied causes or diverse populations they feel most empathetic towards, humane education is kind of this big social movement umbrella under which we can all stand, under which we can all say, education is the way towards a brighter future and a better world. Now, we could certainly go on and on about the benefits of humane education, but for now, we're just going to address a few key talking points that you'll hopefully find useful in your own advocacy for humane ed. Now, we know anecdotally that humane education is hugely beneficial just by talking to students, teachers, administrators, parents, and so on. But we also know through assessments that humane education increases pro-social behavior and helps develop empathy. There are even studies that suggest humane education can increase IQ. So there's real evidence that humane education is important, both on the academic front and on the character development front. Humane education also allows students to think critically about issues that directly impact them. Topics covered in a lesson are real, timely issues that new generations are inheriting and should consequently be early on to learn and think about. And lastly, humane education really could be the key to a kinder, more sustainable world for everyone. Just imagine it, if every child was able to get an education that encompassed critical thought about problems impacting people, animals, and the environment, and were then allowed to problem solve in a safe space, we could truly see the dawn of a kinder world for all three of those life forces. Okay, so all of that said, let's go ahead and dive into talking about various ways that different communities can get involved in humane education as well as humane education advocacy. So at Heart, we're really big believers in incorporating humane education into the greater community, not just in traditional schools. And some really great places for building community through humane education are libraries and bookstores. So whether you're a librarian, library or bookstore employee, or you're volunteering at one of these places, there are some really powerful ways in which you can get involved. One simple way that libraries and bookstores can incorporate humane education is to simply stock humane education titles on their shelves, right? There are a lot of really powerful books out there for people of all ages that focus on environmental ethics, animal protection, and human rights issues, and some certainly even incorporate several or all three of those topics. So where do you find suggestions for humane education books? Well, we have read a lot of humane education literature at Heart and have compiled a list available on our website at the address on your screen right now that actually categorizes books based on topic as well as age range. So if you're looking to stock more humane education titles generally, or would like to have more books specifically based on issues associated with people, animals, or the planet at your library or bookstore, please do check out that resource, and please always feel free to contact us with suggestions on books. You can also promote humane literature by having a humane education book of the week or month. You can create an entire section that is devoted to humane education books. And you can always ask patrons and community members for suggestions on titles that you might want to make available. That's a really good way to get your community engaged. You could even promote humane education and then have a suggestion box for humane education titles. Another great way for librarians or people who work or volunteer in libraries or bookstores to get more involved with humane education is to incorporate humane books into story times. A lot of libraries and bookstores have scheduled story times every week or a calendar of story times that promote different authors. And this is a really fun educational opportunity, particularly for younger kids and their parents or legal guardians. By reading humane education books to a group, you invite them to engage with a story that focuses on helping people, animals, and or the planet. And then you have this really great opportunity to facilitate a thoughtful dialogue about the story and the theme and the moral. Here in Portland, a volunteer and I recently started hosting a story time at a local bookstore, and every month we have a different topic. So this upcoming story time, we're going to focus on companion animal homelessness and associated issues like sheltering and euthanasia. We're going to read Buddy Unchained and Maggie's Second Chance. Both of those are on our humane education book list. And then we're going to lead a conversation about what the characters in the books experienced and some possible solutions for pet homelessness, as well as ideas for responsible companion animal guardianship. And then we're actually going to make some really simple dog toys out of braided fabric for animals in local shelters. So it'll be a really fun and educational hour for the kids, and it's great because these types of programs can be a one-time gig, or if a library or bookstore is interested, you can start doing ongoing humane education story times. You can also invite local humane education authors or writers who are on tour to do readings. You can offer to read humane education books at local events. Veg Fest is this huge 2-day event here in Portland, and with the help of a lot of volunteers, HART offers 3 different story times. We use different humane ed books on both days, and they're always a huge success. I did want to quickly mention, and I'll cover this again in regard to films, that books are, of course, typically protected by copyright law. So while online readings of humane ed books, say on a YouTube channel, can be a great way to reach people, you have to have the author's permission to do this. So please do definitely keep that in mind. Okay, another suggestion for how you can get more involved in humane education within this wonderful realm of libraries or bookstores is that you can start a book club. And you can, of course, also do this at home or in your community. Book clubs are, again, great for a lot of different age groups, including adults, and there's a whole lot of room for creativity here, depending upon your interests and the interests of your club members. So you can create a club devoted to actually learning about humane education topics, and it can be focused on people, animals, or the environment, or you can read different books that cover issues in all of those areas. And bear in mind, you can meet weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, just however often people are able to meet and discuss literature. Another idea is to create a book club where you read different titles and determine as a group whether the book could qualify as a humane education title or not, and why or why not. You can even create some type of platform or start a blog where members write reviews on the books and discuss the overarching themes and messages, as well as ways in which people can get involved to help people, animals, or the environment. So those are just a few ideas, but there are a lot of interesting ways that you can run a book club. And one final idea for library or bookstore employees or volunteers is to invite humane education organizations or other local nonprofits in to actually run a humane ed-based program. Or you can also, depending upon time and availability, certainly create and run your own. HART has done a number of library programs, and it's such a good opportunity for both young people and adults to come together and build community over shared interests related to animal protection, environmental ethics, and/or human rights. Okay, so that about does it for librarians and bookstores. I'm going to hand it over to Mickey.
Excellent. Thank you, Claire. So next, we're going to talk about opportunities for youth leaders. And what we mean by youth leaders are people who work with youth in non-school settings. For example, you might facilitate an after-school program or be a counselor at a summer camp or run a YMCA program. The great thing about these types of programs is that they tend to be more flexible than traditional classrooms and allow for more opportunities to do service learning, field trips, and group projects. As a youth leader, you have an excellent opportunity to give young people hands-on experience doing things about issues they care about. Young people are bombarded all the time with problems going on in the world, and that can be demoralizing. You can give them an opportunity to talk about the issues they care about and then take action to help. There are plenty of fun, simple actions that young people can take within your program. For example, a simple activity that we like to do with students is create supplies for local animal shelters, such as dog treats, toys, and blankets. Partnering with a nonprofit is a great way to increase your impact and also to get ideas for projects. For example, we had a group of students that wanted to help chimpanzees. So we contacted an organization called Save the Chimps, which is a sanctuary for chimpanzees used in research, entertainment, and exotic pets. They recommend the students create papier-mâché balls filled with treats for their chimps. The students love creating the enrichment balls and learning about the chimps at the sanctuary. You can also use your program as a way of introducing students to new issues, but in a proactive way where they do hands-on activities to help with the problem right away. For example, we'll teach students about the problem of plastic pollution in the ocean and how single-use plastics are often the cause of this problem. Then we'll have students decorate cloth bags that can be purchased at a very affordable rate online. This way, students learn about a new problem, but they also know that they're making a difference. Another idea is to take students on field trips to locations that will foster their sense of empathy and compassion. These trips can be an excellent opportunity for students to connect with animals and nature. We'll often bring young people in our summer camps to places like sanctuaries and animal shelters because it's heartwarming to see them bond with animals, especially animals they might never have the opportunity to meet in real life, like farm animals. Also, many sanctuaries and shelters have staff that is trained in leading tours and educating people about their facilities and their mission. Field trips can also be an opportunity to make social justice and change-making come alive. Students at our summer camp in Chicago took a trip to Greenheart, which is a store that sells fair trade and sustainable items. While they were there, they learned about how the products sold at the store benefited communities in Central America and Africa where they were made. One of the highlights of the trip was the store had this paper made out of elephant poop, which the campers got a big kick out of for obvious reasons. I'd also like to plug the Be the Change Museum in Indianapolis as a field trip location. The museum is a collaboration between the Peace Learning Center and HEART. It features 30 permanent interactive exhibits for people of all ages about how small changes can make a big difference in our world. If you're unable to take your students on a field trip for financial or logistical reasons, try inviting a guest speaker to come to you. We've invited a huge variety of people with different backgrounds to come to our programs at HEART, and there are many organizations that have educational programs that will come to your location. However, I've had the most success with guest speakers when they are people I know. For example, I would volunteer with a program called Pets for Life. I thought the work they do was interesting, and I assume my students would as well. One day, I invited the staff from the program to come and describe their jobs. The students were so excited about the work that they were doing that they decided to do a bake sale to raise money for their organization. Another time, I invited two of my friends from college who worked for an organization called Smart Energy. This organization helps government buildings be more energy efficient. My friends told the students about the work they do and demonstrated some of the tools they use, such as a laser measurer and a digital thermometer. When they walked around the building with the students, and pointed out some things that they could do that make the building more energy efficient, like changing the light bulbs and improving the insulation. Conducting a service learning project with your students is another way to bring humane education into your role as a youth leader. Service learning is a strategy for teaching that connects community service with academic knowledge and skills. For example, at HEART, we've worked with students to create a community garden for their school. Through this project, students learn geometry by plotting the garden, and also biology through sprouting and planting the vegetables. If you're interested in facilitating a service learning project with your students, there are plenty of resources out there. Some of the organizations we recommend are listed here. Roots and Shoots has an online course that you can take to learn their service learning curriculum. Their curriculum incorporates community mapping and a lot of online mapping websites to create their maps, which is perfect for people that want to incorporate STEM into their projects. Free the Children We Day conduct professional development workshops in cities across the United States and also have a lot of resources on their website. The National Youth Leadership Council has an extensive amount of resources on their website as well. And now I'm going to let Claire take over, and she's going to start talking about parents.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mickey. Okay, so I'm going to talk a bit about ideas for how parents can get more involved in the wide world of humane education. And just a really quick disclaimer, for the purposes of this section, I'm going to talk about parents of human children. But for everyone out there with fur, feather, or scale babies, we, and specifically Vivian and Lydia, most certainly applaud you. Okay, so one really effective way to advocate for humane education as a parent is to engage in outreach at your child's school and within his or her educational community. And there are lots of ways to do this. Certainly one way is to build a relationship with your child's teacher and encourage him or her to incorporate more humane education in the classroom. Many times teachers are very receptive to learning about and infusing humane ed into their curriculum. They're just really busy and may need help finding resources. So if you attend meetings with your child's educators and bring examples of lesson plans and suggestions for activities or other resources, that will certainly help a lot. Another really great way to spread the good word about humane education is to join your PTA if you haven't already and attend meetings and kind of serve as a representative for humane ed. You can even attend other PTA meetings and ask to give brief presentations on humane education and the benefits of teaching kids about issues that impact people, animals, and the environment. Often other parents will then get on board, and you can even begin to organize a community of parents who would like to see more humane education in their children's schools. Contacting your school boards is also a really great, highly effective way to advocate or really lobby for more humane ed in your local schools, because as a parent, you're a very important constituent and have a great interest in ensuring that your children are properly equipped to inherit this world. One fun, easy way for a lot of parents to get more involved is to incorporate more humane education at home. We talk a lot about how to infuse humane education into classrooms, but it's just as important for people of all ages, really, to learn about and put their own most ethical solutions into practice outside of school as well. So we've just listed a few suggestions here, but the sky really is the limit, and talking to other parents about humane education at home is a great way to brainstorm and share new ideas. But for now, let's just cover a few of these suggestions. Games are, of course, a great way to engage your children. There are a number of web-based games you can explore. One example, we really like Games for Change. It's a wonderful resource if you're looking for computer-based activities. We also highly suggest Junior Explorers. There is a fee, but it's a really engaging game that actually has both web-based elements and a physical component. You can also create your own games. Just one really simple idea is to create different hypothetical situations concerning people, animals, or parts of nature that you and your child think critically about and work through the ethical implications of together. You can also read books, watch movies, make upcycled crafts together. These little holiday cork ornaments on your screen are really fun to make and reinforce the idea of repurposing what we would otherwise call garbage. Nature walks are a great way to experience your environment together, or you can also set aside time to do litter cleanups and build a deeper appreciation for the natural beauty in your neighborhood. One idea I love is cooking together as humane education. You can research or create recipes that are healthy for you and kind towards animals and the planet, and also hopefully delicious, and then spend some quality time both preparing and enjoying the meal you created together. You can make awareness-raising materials or PSAs and disperse them in your community. And certainly researching topics and learning about current events is a great way to incorporate humane education at home, because then you can talk about what's happening. The more openly we can all communicate about our world and how to make it better, the brighter a future we can create for everyone. Now, if you're looking for fun ways to get out into the community with your kids and also advocate for humane education, then volunteering is a wonderful hands-on way to do it. As with many of our suggestions today, we're really only scraping the surface. There are tons of volunteer opportunities out there. So we've just compiled a few ideas here. Animal shelters and sanctuaries are almost always in need of help, of course, bearing in mind that some do have age requirements and may involve a little bit of training before you can work directly with the animals. Food kitchens and homeless shelters are also really gratifying places to help others. I actually used to work at a homeless shelter for families in Phoenix, and we were just always needing more help. Retirement centers or assisted living facilities often need volunteers to come in as well and help with recreational activities, and many offer adopt a grandparent programs, which are so neat for both the residents and the volunteers. Many local nonprofits have structured ongoing litter cleanups for volunteers volunteers, and if you've never done one, they're actually really fun. It's fun to just go pick up trash with other people in your community and get to know one another. Cultural events and festivals typically need volunteers to help with everything from tabling and outreach to just directing people to restrooms or directing them to how to properly dispose of their trash. And of course, you and your kids can look for all sorts of different opportunities and maybe try different things every time you volunteer. You could actually even create a volunteer calendar together. But if you're looking to consistently volunteer for one particular population or cause, you can find a related organization and get on their volunteer list. And of course, you can always volunteer by advocating for humane education itself as well. Okay, the last suggestion I wanted to go over for how parents can get more involved is to actually volunteer in your child's classroom or during any of their extracurricular activities or after-school programs. So again, lots of room for creativity here, but we have a lot of volunteers who express interest in actually teaching. And if you're a parent, you already have a close connection with your child's school. So if you are interested in teaching, after researching resources, programs, and lesson plans, then you can offer to come into your child's classroom and teach anything from one lesson to an entire program. You can also offer to organize or even facilitate an assembly or rally around one specific topic. It could be anything from pet homelessness in your community to better understanding how we can collectively reduce our plastic consumption. Another great way to get involved is to suggest humane education field trips, and if you're able, even chaperone. This is a picture of the Cleveland High School Animal Advocacy Club, a student group Hart facilitates at the Animal Rights Conference, and one of the students' parents, the woman on the far right, she came as a chaperone. Her name's Jonna Lynn, and it was so great having her there because she was able to share this really powerful experience, not just with her son, but also his animal-loving peers, and they were all able to take what they learned home. Of course, this was a major field trip out of state, so you can suggest smaller field trips to local museums, sanctuaries, etc. Many communities are also pretty much always in need of volunteers who want to actually run after-school programs. Here in Portland, I work a lot with an organization called SUN. They offer free after-school services, and they're always looking for volunteers to run fun, but also educational programs. We've run entire programs based on creating art out of garbage. We did one that was based on being outside and communing with nature through poetry and short story writing. Again, the options really are endless. And lastly, one really great way to get involved is to help create a culture of humaneness at your child's school. So you can offer to organize a clothing drive for homeless community members or a blanket drive for animals in shelters. You can raise money to start a community garden at your child's school, or you can encourage the administration to adopt more plant-based options in their cafeteria, just as examples. Okay, I'm going to hand it back over to Nikki.
Thank you, Claire. So next what we're going to do is we're going to talk about students. For all the students listening, we want you to know that you have the power to influence the people who make key decisions about what you learn. So if you believe that education should include conversations about environmental ethics, or lessons on animal protection, or human rights service projects, we're going to provide you with some ideas for how you can make that happen. Student clubs are a great way to spearhead humane education efforts at your school. Start by coming up with an idea for what kind of club you'd like to start. You can focus on an animal protection club, environmental ethics, or human rights, or you can create a humane club that combines all three. Write out a brief proposal and approach an administrator or teacher who might be receptive to supporting your club. Next, start promoting. Post flyers around school, make announcements, and talk with classmates and teachers about this great new opportunity to get involved. Once you have members, set up a schedule for when, where, and for how long you'll meet, and what you would like to achieve over the course of the semester or school year. Having a club leaders is very important, so organize an election to decide who will hold office, like president or treasurer, and the last step is to start meeting and prepare for success. Another thing you can do is to talk with school administrators about humane education. Not everyone is familiar with the idea of humane education or organizations like HEART, so by talking with adults who make decisions about what and how you learn, you'll actually become the teacher. Try setting up a meeting with your principal and prepare by bringing in some information about humane education or sample lesson plans. Make a case for incorporating compassion into your school curriculum by referring to some of the evidence-based research on the benefits of humane education, and end the meeting with an ask. So what we did was we worked with a group of students here in Chicago who wanted to build a community garden at their school. The students wanted to not only get the support of the school, but also the local community on this humane education project. So they traveled to the office of their alderman and explained why they thought the community garden was important and how it would help them learn. Then they asked the alderman to write an official endorsement of the project, which he did. So as Claire mentioned earlier, there are plenty of humane education books out there, and new ones are being published all the time. So why not ask your English or social studies teacher to assign a book about protecting animals, caring for the environment, or being kind to other human beings? One simple thing you can do is suggest books on these topics to your teacher. Then explain why you enjoyed the book and why you think your classmates should have the opportunity to read it for school credit. If you can't think of any books off the top of your head, check out Hart's Humane Book List for ideas. In addition to books, you can also suggest guest speakers who you would like to have visit your classroom. Last year in Chicago, we worked with a group of students who did a service learning project where they organized an assembly at their school about helping animals. The students did most of the work presenting the information to their peers about helping dogs and cats, but decided their assembly needed an exciting finale. So they did some research and found Jeff Jerkins, who rehabilitates dogs at a local animal shelter called Found. They invited Jeff and his dog, Junebug, to talk about how he uses positive reinforcement to train animals, and then they demonstrated some strict tricks for the audience. It was a big hit. There are also a lot of interesting people in your community who would love to share their talents and passion with your classmates. It is usually easiest to invite people you know to be guest speakers, but if you don't know anyone who you think would be an appropriate guest, you can go online and research programs that are in your area and already visiting schools. Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Claire again. She's going to talk about concerned citizens.
Excellent. Thank you, Mickey. I love that Junebug. Okay, so anyone joining us today and anyone who listens later fits into this one incredibly powerful community of concerned citizens. Whether you're also a parent or a student or fit into any of the other categories we're discussing today, I imagine that a lot of you who are parents or teachers also identified as concerned citizens during our poll today. And certainly concerned citizens and constituents who would like to make the world a better place through humane education are some of our greatest assets. So let's just talk a little bit about ways in which you can get active in this movement. Okay, so first off, it's clearly pretty difficult to care about something if you don't already know much about it, right? And the term comprehensive humane education is really new to a lot of people. So while we know how beneficial an education in kindness and problem solving is, there needs to be a lot more awareness raised just for what it is we're talking about here, simply so that other people can get on board. Now, I would like to make mention of the fact that not everyone refers to this type of education as humane education. Other people may call it kindness education, some may refer to it as ethics education or character education, and that's all perfectly okay. The point is that we want other people to have a better understanding of what it means to incorporate education that focuses on contemporary issues, critical thought, and problem solving into our educational system and atmosphere. So let's talk a bit about outreach ideas, because it is arguably one of the most important things we can be doing to propel humane education forward. And outreach can take all sorts of different forms, much like any type of activism can. But I will say that it's largely dependent upon how much time you have to devote. So if you don't have a lot of time but you want to be more vocal about humane education, you can try just talking with friends and family members about why this is important, particularly if they have kids or are teachers or administrators. This is also a really good way to kind of get started in humane education outreach and hone in how you can most effectively advocate. Another easy way to engage in outreach, and this has been used in lots of different movements, is to create bags or bumper stickers or buttons or t-shirts that have slogans or catchphrases that advocate for humane ed. Zoe Weil wrote a book called The World Becomes What We Teach, and I just love that and have used that line in my own advocacy, and at one point actually had a sticker with that phrase on my computer, and I got asked about it a lot at coffee shops, and I was at school at the time, at school and whatnot. And so those are such great opportunities to have a conversation with people who are total strangers about how we can help people, animals, and the planet together. Now, if you have more time, there are certainly lots of effective ways to reach out to community members. Tabling is such a good way to invite people to have a real engaging conversation about humane education. And oftentimes you can set up free tables at local events in front of eco or animal or human-friendly businesses, provided you get permission, of course. or even out in front of libraries or community centers like we mentioned earlier. This is a picture of a Portland Heart volunteer, Amy. She's tabling for humane education at an event here for people who would like to volunteer more. And this was such a great opportunity for her to do, and also for people in our community to learn more about how they too can get involved with humane ed. Other ideas, you can use social media, excuse me, you can use social media to get active for humane education and educate others. You can start a blog, you can create kind of promotional materials about humane education and distribute them to schools and other concerned constituents. I could go on because this is a big part of creating a larger movement, right? So I'm going to move on, but I really invite you to keep with us and share your ideas or experiences with humane education outreach. Now, another form of activism is community organizing, and while this can certainly be a more time and labor-intensive effort, it can also be well worth the while because we're typically much stronger in numbers, right? Plus, it's really nice and reaffirming to bring community together over a shared interest or concern. So how do you go about doing this? Well, there are myriad ways depending upon how much time and energy you'd like to devote, but one option is to create some type of club or coalition devoted to raising awareness. Here in Portland, I've actually spent the last few months creating a coalition of individuals and other organizations who are interested in creating more of a movement around humane education. So every month we get together to discuss new ideas for outreach to schools, parents, students, and community members. We're also beginning to plan an event for the spring, and as our coalition grows, we intend to work more closely with local and state legislators as well. I've been organizing these meetings through meetup.com. This is the screenshot of what that website looks like. I'm a really big fan of Meetup. I've mentioned them before in previous webinars, but there is a small monthly fee. So if you're able to organize regular or fairly regular meetings, Meetup is a great way to find like-minded individuals and organize. But if it's difficult to meet in person or you'd rather not incur any type of a fee, you can certainly also watch community organizing efforts online. Social media is a fantastic platform by which to reach people for free. You can start a simple Facebook page, and this way you can start to bounce ideas off of one another. You can post ideas for outreach. And of course, you can expand your community by simply inviting friends to like the page and sharing the page with others. Okay, so next up, let's talk a bit about how you can become a humane education ambassador. I love that title, and I love this idea because it's perfect for anyone who enjoys public speaking and likes working with people. And it's also great if you don't always have a consistent amount of time to devote to advocacy. So essentially, you can prepare a presentation, and certainly feel free to contact us for ideas or resources or examples. But once you have some type of talk that you can give about humane education, then you can reach out to churches or schools or really anyone who can be an audience. And depending upon how much time you have to present, you can make modifications, you can try new things with different audiences. It's really fun and a really impactful way to get out and advocate for humane education as your time allows. And of course, you can also become a humane educator. You don't need to be a professional teacher to get involved, and you don't need to teach in traditional classrooms, although that can certainly be an option. Last year I was working with some law students who had a little bit of time to devote, and they were really interested in teaching humane education lessons that focused on animal issues. And so they downloaded our free humane resource guide and started reaching out to schools on their own, offering to teach just 1 to 3 lessons. And there were a lot of receptive teachers, and the students who did teach absolutely loved it. If you're a parent, it may be even easier to offer to come into your child's classroom to teach. You can also offer to teach after-school programs. As we mentioned, I actually have an intern right now who is a high school student and kind of exploring future career paths since she's a senior. And this fall, she and I are going to design and co-teach a humane education after-school program together. Also, bear in mind that when we talk about humane education, it certainly also applies to adults, not just kids. I teach students at a community college here about humane education and animal law. And there are also lots of opportunities to get involved at community events, again at libraries, or even offer adult humane education classes through an online platform or for friends or family at home. Okay, another idea, and this one really could have fit into a couple of categories today, is to host movie nights, or mornings or evenings or whenever is convenient for you. Short films and movies have this incredible ability to impact people of all ages. If you think about all of the times you or someone you know has suggested a film based on personal impact, it's pretty astounding. Because in anywhere from a few minutes to several hours, we can really learn a lot and have a powerful experience with a film. So much like hosting a book club, you can start organizing movie nights. In terms of deciding on films you might like to show, there are a number of great resources out there. I really like a lot of the movies listed on IHE's website. The address is there on your screen. But there are always new ones coming out as well. And I think one really interesting option is to screen films that may have humane education undercurrents and then really delve into a conversation about the intricacies of the film afterwards. I just want to give you guys an example. My partner and I recently went to the theater to see The Secret Life of Pets, which is an animated film about the adventures of these various New York City companion animals. And the film itself inspired a lot of emotion and critical thought in us both, because while there was a lot of reverence building for companion animals, as well as some real consideration given to animals who are discarded after they've stopped serving some type of human-centric purpose, there was also a scene, and I promise I won't spoil anything for those of you who haven't seen it, there was a scene where the animals enter a meat factory, and there are sausages dancing and diving into bowls of ketchup. And it painted, I thought, a really idealistic portrait of the meat industry. And we talked, my partner and I, we talked about the movie for a solid week after we saw it, kind of going back and forth on how we interpreted the overall message and how it might impact other viewers, particularly the target audience of children. So I think there's a lot of room for really impactful, critical thinking and engaging conversations, again with people of all ages, after watching a humane education film with a group of people. And if you do determine a film is really impactful on the humane ed front, then you can become an advocate for that film. Just as an example, the film Blackfish has received a lot of attention and publicity and is now actually in part being credited for recent legislation banning the breeding and use of orca whales for performance purposes in California. I do want to just quickly mention, though, that films are subject to copyright law, of course, like books. So even if you aren't charging people to watch a film, you'll want to be really careful about screenings. One way to exercise the most caution is to host movie nights at your home with a circle of similarly concerned citizens. But if you do decide to host a screening elsewhere, say someplace public, definitely be mindful of the legality involved there. Okay, and last one, of course, one incredibly powerful way that concerned citizens can get involved is to lobby. Frankly, we could spend an entire webinar on this advocacy method, but for now I just wanted to go over the basics. So on your screen you'll see a map with yellow balloons in certain states. These are the states with humane education laws, meaning that these states have passed legislation that either mandates or authorizes the teaching of kindness towards animals, reverence for our natural world, and/or compassion and respect for other human beings. Now, if you do live in one of these places, we definitely encourage you to visit the link on your screen to review the legislation in your state, because they're not all created equal. And the handout that I mentioned previously, if you want to go ahead and download that, that describes each state humane education law and what exactly that legislation aims to achieve. Now, if you are interested in lobbying, there are many ways you can go about doing it, but we have some really simple guidelines. First, you'll want to figure out who it is you're even lobbying. So it could be anyone from your school board to local legislators to your state representatives, frankly all the way up to the, if that's ever doable. As I mentioned, you'll want to determine if your state already has a humane ed law or not, and take a close look at any applicable legislation, because you'll always be most effective if you know the existing law and then you have a very specific ask. And that too can take a lot of different shapes. So maybe you're asking for your state's humane ed law to be amended to include an enforcement clause, or perhaps your state has a humane ed law that doesn't mandate teaching a particular issue that you are passionate about, like humane methods for urban wildlife management, just as an example. If your state doesn't have a humane education law at all, then drafting a bill that mandates humane ed be taught in your state could be the big ask, right? And one thing that helps a lot when lobbying is to develop a white paper or other materials to help educate your legislator on the issue and on what you're actually asking for. Now, when it comes time to lobby, face-to-face meetings are really always going to be the best if you're able, but handwritten letters can also be very compelling. Phone calls and emails are always options as well. And you can certainly lobby on your own, but you can also encourage friends or family to lobby with you. You can do some constituent organizing so that more people are reaching out. If you have the time and energy, you can even organize a humane education lobby day. here in Portland that Humane Education Coalition I mentioned is planning to organize a Humane Education Lobby Day in our capital city of Salem for concerned citizens, teachers, students, and affiliated nonprofits. We do have a humane education law here, but unfortunately it does not include an enforcement clause, so that's a really good place to put our initial focus. We have also collectively decided that it's really important to us as constituents that students learn more about our food system as a humane education topic and some of the major issues affecting people, animals, and the planet therein. So we're actually going to be working with Lewis and Clark Law School to draft some amendments to the legislation that currently exists. So there's kind of just one more idea on outreach and community organizing that ties into lobbying, is working with local universities and or colleges. Okay, that about does it for concerned citizens. I'm going to hand it back over to Mickey so he can talk about school administrators.
Okay, thank you, Claire. So administrators make many important decisions for both teachers and students and have a great responsibility to support their educational community. At Heart, we know humane education has the power to help students develop important critical thinking skills and devise carefully crafted solutions to many local and global problems. But evidence-based research has also shown that humane education has a positive impact on everything from pro-social behavior to empathy development. By incorporating some of the following ideas, administrators can foster a culture of compassion and empowerment for their entire educational communities. As we all know, teachers are busy people with important jobs, and it can be hard to find time to independently seek out resources on how to influence humane education into mainstay academic topics. By offering training and professional development opportunities to your school teachers, you're able to provide them with necessary methods, tools, and resources to effectively integrate humane education. Grade-specific or school-wide trainings also unite educators and create a culture of awareness for humane education that can often transcend to other schools or even districts. If you're looking for help with this process, HEART provides consultation, teacher training, and professional development to schools, so just send us an email if you're interested. At HEART, we believe that service learning is one of the best ways to engage students in humane education. As you're learning about an issue, it feels good to get active and become part of the solution. Both large and small-scale projects can have a lasting impact, not just on the community served, but also for the students providing the services. Projects can take all forms, particularly if your entire school will be participating. First, you'll want to choose a timely animal, human, or environmental issue, and through school-wide efforts, educate students on that topic. Next, devise ways in which everyone can get involved and encourage students and teachers to come up with their own projects ideas as well. If your school is interested in raising awareness on sweatshops, try hosting a clothing swap organized by your school, where attendees can learn about problems associated with the clothing industry and then trade fun secondhand fashion. Want to help your students learn more about security and sustainable agriculture? Launch a community garden at your school. Notice a feral cat population around your school? How about teach outreach programs to the local community on the needs of humane population management? The ideas and options are endless, and by engaging your entire school, the positive impacts for everything involved will be greater. If your school would like to incorporate more humane education, try reaching out to local animal protection, environmental preservation, or human rights services. Animal shelters and humane societies usually offer great educational programs and often travel to local schools. Most cities now boast a number of eco-friendly organizations who focus, in whole or in part, on educating youth on environmental preservation. And lots of groups are devoted to education regarding everything from bullying to homelessness to child labor. By contacting organizations devoted to humane education issues, you can begin to develop a network of guest speakers and visiting teachers while simultaneously establishing and inspiring relationships between your school and the local nonprofit community.
Awesome.
And now I'm going to hand it back over to Claire.
Thank you so much, Mickey. Okay, we did want to just quickly make mention of a few important considerations or reminders as we're starting to wrap up here. The first is that we advocate for education, not bias-based solutions. The concept of humane education really does, it relies on allowing individuals to learn and think critically and develop their own most ethical, sustainable solutions. So we want students of all ages to feel comfortable and safe exploring these issues that impact people, animals, and the planet, You never want them to feel judged or unwelcome. Another consideration, and it certainly is not meant to be disheartening, is that change often happens slowly and incrementally. Certainly in the American educational realm, where we haven't seen major changes in how we approach education for over 100 years. So whatever you're doing to advocate for humane ed and however much time you are able to devote, it's all very meaningful and an important contribution to this social movement we're developing. And also, and we can't possibly reinforce this enough, ideas for how to get involved in humane education and humane education advocacy are limitless. And we really rely on our community to share ideas and resources. So please be as creative as you like and keep in touch to let us know about all of the great things you've created and are doing to propel our movement forward. Okay, and with that, just one more thing we wanted to suggest before we take questions. Since this webinar was all about how everyone can get involved, we also wanted to invite all of you to stay connected. Right now, the humane education movement is quite small, but it can grow to be a very strong, very powerful force for good, provided that we really organize and band together. So if you are interested in starting to create a network of activists and would like to share your email address with other participants today, please email Mickey or me after the webinar today. Our emails are listed on your screen, and they'll also be on the final slide as well. Okay, so without further ado, we would like to open it up to questions. We'll be able to take questions for about 5 or 6 minutes if anybody has anything they'd like to ask or any comments. Okay. Nikki, are you seeing in your chat box questions?
I am not.
We'll give it just one more minute if anybody has anything they'd like to ask. Otherwise, we will go ahead and wrap up. Okay, I'm going to hope that we just covered everything. Oh, actually, it looks like we do have a question. Okay, the question is, are you able to share what your meetup is doing so if I start one, I can get some ideas of what to do? And absolutely, if anybody is interested in any of the specific ideas that Mickey or I mentioned today, please definitely email us so that we can work with you to brainstorm and also share what we have done in our respective cities. And it looks like we might actually have a couple of other questions. Okay.
So Annette asked, what is the best way to submit a question?
So the best way to submit a question to us, I imagine this is true for you too, Mickey, would be to email us. If you go ahead and just send us an email, again, our emails are going to be listed on the last screen here, then we can certainly get back to you as quickly as possible. And even, you know, if you would like to organize a meeting over the phone, we're all about doing whatever we can to help everybody get more involved.
Excellent. I agree. And then it looks like Ingrid asked, what is the prevalence of standalone humane education organizations? I guess I think strictly, I think there's a lot in shelters. So if you're looking ones that are like a single focus area, you can find a lot of different ones. I guess ones that are comprehensive humane education might be harder to find in your area. But I guess you can get like a good diverse group of people to come so that you could be more comprehensive when you want to present to your students.
Absolutely. And then it looks like we got one, what is an example of an uplifting documentary? And then I suppose that this question would depend upon the age group. Mickey, for younger kids, do you have an example?
Not that I can think off of the top of my head.
Yeah, I think, you know, it would depend upon the age group again, but it certainly seems Like there are some good ones. I think Peaceable Kingdom would be one that might be good if you're talking about farming. Yeah, that would be a good one. Again, Ivy has a lot of great movies listed on their website, but certainly Annette, who is the person who asked that question, please get in touch with us because depending upon the age group you're working with, there are certainly good documentaries out there that are uplifting and certainly empowering as well.
Excellent.
Okay, it looks like those are all of the questions we have. Anybody else? Okay, well then it looks like that's about all the time we have today. We really want to thank all of you for joining us and for your interest in humane education and desire to join us in this critical social movement. If you do have any questions, please, please, please feel free to contact either of us at Nikki@TeachHumane or Claire@teachhumane.org. And do check out our website if you haven't already at teachhumane.org, where you can also find our previous webinars. Before we finish today, we'd like to ask everyone to take just a few moments to complete the survey that will briefly appear on your screen after the webinar. We're always hoping to improve upon our efforts, so any and all feedback about today's webinar would be really greatly appreciated. On behalf of both of us, as well as everyone at Heart, we'd like to thank you all once more and wish you the very best of luck with all of your humane education endeavors.